Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who've been avid listeners for the last 9 years, that's right, 9 years, it's official. We are celebrating the 9th anniversary. It was just a few days ago. Today is, if you're watching live, it's July 7th of 2023. If you're watching post-show, you can still celebrate. I'm totally cool with you celebrating anytime with me. So I'm very excited it kind of blows my mind that the Pleasure Zone has been going for 9 years. I've managed to find content and fabulous guests for the last 9 years. And today is no different when I say fabulous guests. So we have a guest today that we are going to be talking about communication. And we're going to be talking about effective and playful communication in relationships. And to me, this is one of those 5 C's. For those of you who listen to this show, one of the 5 C's that I think are highly important. Communication is one of them. So we're really diving deep today. Lee Smith helps coaches communicate on stages, on camera, in front of groups with confidence with her 6-month Candy Method coaching program. And when I heard Lee speak at 2 different events live, the second time, actually, I have to admit, it was the 3rd time, I went, wait a second. The second time I was like, hey, you should be on my show. And the 3rd time I went, hey, I can see how what you do with your Candy Method actually relates to relationships. And it doesn't just have to be about being on stage, but also learning how to communicate effectively is something you can use in your daily life. It doesn't just have to be for business. So I'm excited to have a communications expert, somebody who actually coaches people how to communicate, how to take all those things like pauses and learning how to listen, because effective communication isn't just about speaking. So I am so glad to have you on, Lee. Thank you so much for coming on today. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of things, but I'm just curious, like, what had you feel inspired to say, yes, I'll come and be on that crazy wild, The Pleasure Zone with Milica. Why not?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. And I am one of those speakers. I've been speaking since I was 8 years old. So anytime somebody's going to give me a microphone, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to come play, however that world looks like with that particular host. And then it's you, Milica. Like, anytime that I get to hang out with you in person, way more fun in person. And virtually, I'm going to take advantage of that too. And this is also like you said, it's a different perspective in communication versus public speaking. And I thought, what an opportunity to play with a different facet. So thank you. Really great to be here.
I'm so excited. So prior to getting the show together, we were on a call and we were looking at like different things we could talk about. And we ended up having a really cool conversation about how you've actually, had times in your life where, even though you're a public speaker, where you had some struggles. And I'd love it if we could tap into that, because I think it kind of humanizes you to make it realize, like, yes, you are, you're a public speaker, you're a professional speaker. And even when you have all those tool sets, sometimes we can still struggle, and it's still helpful to have coaches and people that can help us through all of these things. So I'd love to hear some of the things that encouraged you to use public speaking in your own life.
Absolutely. I think, well, definitely when I was in high school, and I was very involved with my youth ministries at the time, and I had already been through a suicide attempt. I had already been through sexual abuse, and I was a teenager like my fellow peers. And being a leader in that community, I had opportunities, whether at a retreat or a major function, to speak in front of 500 to as many as 1,500. The retreat settings were about 60 to 70 fellow teenagers. The bigger groups were anywhere from 500 to 1,500. So I talked about the pain of loneliness and where we can go down that road towards suicide and think that we don't matter. And I wanted to spill the truth that everybody matters. And then when it came to my sexual abuse story, really what I wanted everybody to take away from that was the power of forgiveness, because there was more of an emotional betrayal versus the physically crossing the line, and in how much hate was a part of that experience. And then how do I bring this love back, knowing that I had loved this person so much prior to all of that happening? And then as a teenager, we're so good at taking these molehill problems and blowing them up into mountain-sized disasters, catastrophes, drama. And I wanted to take that from a different perspective of, what about these amazing things that we have that we're like, oh, I'm not so good at that, or somebody else is already doing that and they're doing it so much better than I am. So who am I? And we think of ourselves as these molehills. And I thought, what if we think of ourselves as mountains of possibilities? So those were the various things that I spoke about. And it was also during that time when I learned that 77% of the population would rather face a death, their own death, than an audience. And I thought, what? That's crazy. This is the most fun thing ever. Because for me, it wasn't about being the center of attention, and it definitely had nothing to do with being a know-it-all. I was so far from being that kind of person. But if I had an idea that or story that I wanted to share, I was curious to know how it landed with the audience. And when I got into college and I studied communications, and it wasn't just the public relations communications, but also interpersonal communications, active listening, and that has played such a massive role in the success of my relationships, whether it's friendships or the romantic relationships, familial relationships, and then even being a parent. I have 2 grown kids, and having that parent-child relationship into their adulthood, where now we can be friends, and the challenges that come along the way, because speaking begins with the stories that you tell yourself.
Absolutely.
So what are we listening to inside of here? And this is where I think people have that fear of public speaking, because their inner critic takes over. And so the inner critic is like, well, Milica, who are you to be talking about sex and pleasure in the body? Who's going to listen to you? And oh my gosh, those topics, are you kidding? What? It's so out of the norm. And so who's going to tune into that? Or Lee, you've done what in your life? And so what is building your credibility? Well, I can say now that I've studied under Brendan Burchard and his World's Greatest Speaker training, and Les Brown with his Power Voice Academy. And I've spoken on over 500 stages, in person, virtual, all around the world. You name it. I've been there, I've done it. But I have had to journey along the way. And it did begin with the self-talk. And that even goes back to my childhood, if it's okay to share that too, because I grew up in a mixed race or mixed ethnicity. My mom came from Vietnam, my dad here in the States, and my mom Tiger Mom, raised me with all the love in her heart, of course, but raised me in a way of telling me all the things I did wrong. And the whole comparison game. Why can't I be a good girl like Elizabeth? Why can't I get good grades like Mary? Why can't I be obedient like Susan? And I missed a spot. And why didn't I get that right? And how am I so smart and I'm not getting straight A's in school, and just all of that. And then my dad pouring into me, you're so capable, Lee. You're such an amazing leader. You're going to lead others in a positive path, and you're going to show them how to have fun in life. And I had this game with myself, even as a young child, where I would stare in a mirror, not in vain, but it was just a game I played. I would stare and stare, and then I noticed all I could see was my mom's face. And when I did that, I heard my mom's voice and all the things she would say to me. And I was like, oh, I love my mom, but I don't like that feeling. And I thought, I wonder if I could do this with my dad's face. And I shook off, my mom's, what I was seeing in the mirror with my mom's face. And I stared and stared and stared until all I could see was my dad's face. And I thought, okay. And then I would hear my dad's voice, all the great things he was telling me. Okay. And I remember thinking as a 7, 8-year-old child, I love my mom, I love my dad, but who's telling me the truth about who I am? And I thought, well, what if I shake this all off and I just look at myself? What do I hear now? And it was my own voice saying, you are amazing. You are smart. Are you perfect?
At the age of 8, darling?
And that's okay. Yeah, the age of 8. Isn't that crazy?
You're a little bit advanced there with your awareness. That's freaking amazing.
Boom.
That's freaking unbelievable. Like it's believable. I know you because it's like brains work differently, but that's like a phenomenal thing to have within you, to know and have the awareness that this is somebody else's voice. And this, I did not have that growing up. I didn't have that awareness. I was aware of other things. I was aware of all kinds of energies, but they were very not that. I was very aware of perverts and very aware of other things. So I had that experience. But to be able to know your own thoughts I was not until I was a teenager did I realize that I was hearing multiple different people's opinions of who I was and that I could distinguish that. So that's very cool that you actually found a method to shake it off. And it's like you were doing your own mirror therapy at 8 years old on your own for yourself.
Yes.
And just having those conversations. It's very gestalt of you. And you're like projecting these people out to you and having these conversations back and figuring that out. That's absolutely brilliant. And what a gift that you did that for yourself. Like, that's incredible. I can actually see like a child's story in that, like a story for kids right in there. Yep, I see it. I even see like the drawings. It's your story.
Yeah.
Write it. I think it's great. So that's fantastic. I have a child, and I like at the age of 2 and 3, they would stand in front of the mirror and make different faces just to see how, like, what does happy look like? What does sad look like? And like would stand there for hours having like doing different facial expressions to try and understand facial expressions.
Right.
And now we look back and Ziva's like, I think that's maybe because I might be on the autism spectrum that I do that. I'm like, maybe, but that was really fascinating to watch yourself do expressions, and you're watching yourself in the mirror have conversations about acknowledging what isn't you and what is you, and giving yourself the affirmation at the age of 7 or 8 that you knew who you were and you were neither of them, and yet both of them, and probably neither of them, right? So aspects of them both, but truly you individually.
Yeah.
What a gift, because people can be like 90 and not even know that.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
And it has played, like I said, a huge part in relationships moving forward, of how I saw my friendships and then, like I said, my romantic relationships, and now my husband. We've been married for 22 plus years, and then raising my stepson. He was 5 when we got married, and then raising our daughter together. Just it's really amazing. And then even watching my own daughter have her own self-awareness at an early age, I'm like, oh, that's what I must have looked like to the world as I'm watching her at a young age spread like that too. Pretty amazing.
Oh, that's really cool. So with all of this knowledge you had about yourself at the age of 8, realizing that you could shake off everybody's everything, what do you feel was one of the first things that you, like, you were saying like you were speaking in the like in youth groups and different things. What was like one of the things that was like the first thing you felt you really wanted to tell the world publicly? But we'll talk about that after, because we are going to head to our first commercial break in a minute. I just want you to think about that while we go to commercial break. Just what is it that was like, it's kind of like, if we're in a box for a long time and then we finally get out of the box, what's the first thing that we're like, pop out, boom, this is me. Like, what do I want to say? And I wonder that for those of you who are listening too, if you felt like you've been in the box with your voice and you haven't said anything, if you got unwrapped and unraveled and you popped open that box, or what would you yell out to the world? And what And you can take a minute while we're on break, think about that. Like, what would you like to tell people that you haven't said, that would inspire you to start speaking? So have a little ponder on that. We're going to head to our first commercial break. You're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. I don't know if you guys know this, but today is the first time that we are actually going live via TV. We go live all the time via audio, but this is the first time we're going live via TV on several different platforms. So if this is an exciting thing for you, I'm excited myself. You can find us live on the Inspired Choices Network, Inspired Choices Network TV.tv, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also find it after the production in many different platforms. There's over 400 platforms where you can find us. And I hope that you do pass it on too. Tell your friends. How much fun can you have listening to all the shows on Inspired Choices Network? We have such a range of topics that are available for you so that it can assist you in your life. All the content is at your fingertips. You can also get the Inspired Choices app so that it's right there. You can drive with me. You can sleep with me. I mean, I get asked that all the time. Can I sleep with you? Yes, you can. Get the app. And that's how you can sleep with me. So for those of you who are excited to sleep with me, go get the app and listen to some shows while you sleep with me. Have fun with yourself too, because some of them are pretty invigorating. They may be inspirational. They may be ones that you want to take to bed with you and your lover, because some of them are instructional. So if you'd like to have some instructional shows like how to have sensual massage with your partner, go listen to some of those instructional shows while you're at it and have lots of fun. Today, we have a great episode for you. If you haven't been listening since the beginning and you're just jumping in now, I encourage you to go back and listen to the beginning. We're talking all about communication, effective and playful communication, which are both super important things to have so that communication doesn't become daunting or something that we put off because we think it's going to be really painful. Like, I don't want to talk about this topic, so we avoid it. And we are speaking with Lee Smith, who is a communications expert. And the question that we had before break, I asked Lee, what was the first thing when we decided, like at the age of 8, Lee's having this conversation with herself about figuring out who she is, knowing that her mother's voice isn't hers, her father's voice in her head isn't hers, and she's got her own voice. And what did that voice want to say to the world? So what did your voice want to say to the world, Lee?
Oh gosh, well, it's that ongoing question, and it is almost what happened the first time I played that mirror game with myself, right? Who am I? And isn't that a question that almost haunts or teases us the rest of our lives? I'm over 50 now, so like for 5 decades, it's like, sure, it's been chasing me, like, who am I? And when we are teenagers, there's so much telling us who and what we are. And then asking ourselves, do we even take that opportunity? And when we do choose to do that, do we then choose to listen to all the voices inside of us, around us? Or do we choose to grab a hold of our own power and our own voice and say, wait a minute, I don't need to listen to any of you. This is who I am. And for me, in my personal journey, Milica, I was on that really fine line between arrogance and confidence, because I did know who I was. And I was so confident in who I was. I thought at this time I was very spiritual and very engrossed in my faith journey. So I'm like, I am a child of God. And that in and of itself makes me lovable. And so I wanted to convey that to others, that you are lovable, whether you feel loved or you don't feel loved. I know there are instances in life where we don't feel loved, but that doesn't mean you're not lovable. You are totally lovable. And when you can get into the amazingness that you are, even as a young teenager, and this is a message I carry into today, and looking at you have brilliance. My message today is you have 3 G's. That you have genius, you have gifts, and you have greatness within you. And the genius is all those things that you think about it and you learn it so quick. It's the knowledge that you just soak up. You can't get enough of it. And when you find somebody else who shares that commonality, you just geek out in conversation about all of those things. And then your gifts are kind of the way that you express. I look at it as a way of expressing yourself. Like, one of my gifts is public speaking. One of my gifts is hugs. One of my gifts is holding space for people. And some people might say I have a gift for dancing, or another way of expressing myself. Other gifts might be an athletic ability, or somebody can paint. They're poetic. They're songwriters. They're musicians, and they are dancers, or the way that they do theatrical performance. So there's all types of, and it's like I said, it's a way of expressing ourselves, and it's a gift that we bring out into the world. And it can be gifts of leadership, like I can take the lead, or I have a gift of advocacy. I stand up for people and I fight for them. So that comes in all different shapes and forms and expressions, like I said. And then the greatness, it's that whole essence of who you are. And so I think I really grabbed this as a teenager developing, because one of my first retreat talks, it was titled, Who Am I? And really looking at, well, yeah, who are we in the world? And I was in a position just for myself of, I don't care what you think of me. I'm going to go out and do my own thing. And it wasn't that I was going to stomp all over you and not care about your feelings. I wanted everybody to be happy and have fun. But I also I was just stubborn in that sense, that I was just going to go out and do my own thing and play with that and see how that showed up in the world. And then as an adult, even into my college years, something that really, and I think you've heard me say this in my talks, is a dear friend of mine took me out for coffee and said, I have to share something with you. And I said, okay. And he said, you are one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. Okay, cool. He said, the way I see you is you are like a diamond, Lee. You take the light that you see in others and you reflect it back to them in a way that they never saw themselves before. I thought, oh, wow, that's quite an observation. Okay. And I related it to, well, yes, I know I intentionally go looking for the best in people. And you know what? When you do that, you find the best in people. And it does work the opposite way. If you want to see the worst in people, I'm sure you will find that too. But I'm just going to skip that path. and recognizing that. And that's what I want to help people see, that if I see it in you, I know it's there. It's just not fantasy in my eyes or my mind. It's like, you have this amazingness about you. And if I can help you see it for yourself, this is what you get to contribute out into the world. And that's why it's so powerful to me to be able to communicate that, either through my stories or through a training or through just an inspiring way, in whatever way that I can. And I've also had this belief. I like to joke, I'm like, I said it long before Oprah Winfrey. I didn't even know who she was. I don't even know what she was doing in the world at the time that I thought this for myself. I was in 5th grade, so about 10, 11 years old. And I remember thinking, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And if only opportunity, or they would choose to share that story, we would learn about each other and about ourselves. And in that way, the world would be a better place, be more interesting and more fun. And so it's such a huge part of my mission now in what I communicate. And it's so much of what I love doing. So I know it kind of went long-winded there, but I hope I answered the question.
No, I love that. I love that you're like, I said it before Oprah. Yeah, I'm going to say it right here that I said that before Oprah. I've had experiences like that where I'm like, what, I said that when I was like 7 years old, and now people are saying it and it's like famous, like,
Right.
And then I have to go, and then I chalk it up to, it's got to be a Jungian thing where we're all tapping into the collective subconscious, and I need to let it go and stop trying to own it. But then I want to own it, because guess what? I said it and I thought it, and it was important, and it became a philosophy in my life. So I get that. And yeah, we had, I remember being in grade 3, and I had a teacher who was all about affirmations. And so this is like 1983. There were not a lot of books out there about affirmations. Maybe she was in a 12-step program. It's hard to say why she had access to this idea of this, but every day she had us all out loud say, I am lovable and capable.
Yeah.
And so we had like a class of 30 kids doing this every day. And I have never forgot it since grade 3. Like, what an impact that it was to be able to do the affirmations out loud and have our voices be heard. And she'd walk up and down and hear that we were saying it out loud. So yeah. And we had a philosophy in that classroom that was called luck. And luck stood for love, understanding, cooperation, and kindness. So you needed to operate with luck.
Yep.
And be, I am lovable and capable.
I love that.
And I thought that was such a great example of how you can communicate you can communicate these things to a person of any age. Like, learning communication skills is not something that you start when you're 25 because now you're interested in like your career. No, you start communication skills. Actually, a lot of communication skills, even with babies, are energetic. Like, you feel your child, you know when they're hungry, so you know something's happening. So there are things you pick up intuitively and interpret the gurgles, and you interpret the body language, and you interpret all of that's part of communication, right? And so I think when people talk about public speaking, they often just think that it has to do with your voice, but it's everything else too. It's when you're not speaking, it's the pauses, it's the body language, it's the eye contact, it's like all of it. And I think if we can bring all of those skills into interpersonal relationships, not just public speaking, if we bring all of that, you're going to be a better, more effective communicator. And your chances are you're going to be heard because you're going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So being interesting is helpful when you're having a conversation, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So we are going to head to our next commercial break in a second, but we have a few questions that I'd really love to address in this show. And some of them have to do with relationships, and some of them you were sharing with me some ideas that we can talk about for this episode. So we're going to be diving into how important communication is in relationship, how it shows up in marriage, how you can get through a difficult conversation, and how you can make communication fun and playful. So we still have all of that content for you guys. We are really hoping that, I'm really hoping that by the end of this show, you start to know that communication doesn't have to be scary or daunting. You can absolutely hire Lee to be a public speaking coach to help you develop some skills so that you can feel more confident in the way that you are communicating, whether it is publicly or whether it is in a private relation, like privately in a relationship. I have a teacher who says that all public speaking is actually speaking to yourself in front of others. And when I've heard that, I was like, I freaking love that.
Right.
And it makes it a heck of a lot easier and less scary that you're speaking to yourself in front of others. And now just go have fun with that and see how you feel. So,
yes.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about play, communication, relationships, how to have effective communication in relationships and marriages and things when we come back from our commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight, we're talking about one of the top 5 C's that I love to talk about on the show. And no, it's not the 4-letter word. It is communication. It's much longer than 4 letters, and we love communication. It is a cornerstone of what's important in a relationship. Communication is important for so many things, whether it's to work out issues that have come up, whether it's for exploration and being able to communicate your desires. Communication is so fundamental to a healthy, happy relationship that is absolutely top of the list. When I work with people, this is one of the things that we work on first. Even when they're like, I want to have more sex. Cool. We're going to work on communication. Why? Because it's that important. So I brought on today a communications expert. Also, Lee Smith is somebody who works with NLP. Are you an NLP practitioner,
I am a
Lee?
certified
Because
NLP
I remember you talking about it before, but I didn't see it in your bio, so I'm going to bring it up.
Yes, I am a certified NLP master practitioner and timeline therapy practitioner. And
Awesome.
that does allow me to help you with your limiting beliefs and self-doubts. And if there are things where there's a root cause that's rooted in the past, we can break through that, bring you to the present, and let you live fully each day thereafter.
I'm a huge fan of NLP. When I was about 22 years old, my mom was working one weekend, and she's like, I don't know what this NLP stuff is. This is like 30 years ago almost, right?
Yeah.
She's like, what is this NLP stuff? I'm like, she's like, I don't know, but I'm going to pay for a class. You go find out what it's about and let me know. So I went off to a weekend course because my mom couldn't go because she needed to work. And I took this like deep dive of NLP for a weekend. Absolutely loved it. I shifted a lot of things around my thought patterns that I had in relationship with my dad, which was also affecting relationship with other people. So highly recommend NLP. Neurolinguistic programming is a fantastic way of being able to actually retrain your brain to have more effective thoughts so that your life is more productive and you're living in a way that's actually creating a life that you would like to have. So connect with Lee if you've never tried NLP, and if you have tried NLP and you love it, just go for it. Book a session. And how can people book a session with you, Lee?
Oh gosh, I wasn't even thinking in that direction. But probably the best way to do it is to book a call, and it's bit.ly/G, the number 3, and then all lowercase call, CALL. And so bit.ly/G3 call.
G3 call. That's how you can do it. So if you do that, if you can book a time, have a discovery session, figure out what's going on. Fantastic. Also, Lee has a 6-month program for public speaking, and is that another place if they go to that bit.ly
They can use
link,
that.
they're also going to be able to book with you for that too. So yes. Before we actually dive into those conversations about how you have better, more effective communication and playful communication in marriage, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your candy method, because I think it's fantastic. And I do know that it's going to relate to the bigger questions around how do you effectively communicate in marriage. So we might actually get more of the umbrella of answering these questions if we talk about your method.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to share. So the candy method, just super quick backstory, it was something that was downloaded to me. I thought, gosh, I've gone through all this life journey, and I've gone through all this self-education from Tony Robbins and Og Mandino, Zig Ziglar, Norman Vincent Peale, and Dale Carnegie, and then later in life with Brenda Burchard, Marie Forleo, and Mel Robbins, and so many other thought leaders out there. And I thought, I have all of these life lessons and all of this education that I've received. How do I put this together in a unique message that I can take out into the world? And here comes the download, and it was the candy method. And that's my 5-piece signature system, and that's for clarity, affirmation, necessity, discipline, you. And when you put these pieces together, particularly now I put it in the role of public speaking, I give you this foundation of confidence so that at any time, whether you need that confidence in an interpersonal communication, or you're doing it in a business relationship or a public speaking setting, you can rock it anytime. And even when the unexpected happens, and trust me, it happens. Milica watched me in action when that happened. And sure enough,
rocked it.
able to press on and just—
You pulled magic out of the air that day. And I was like,
that's back.
You rock it, Lee, because somebody completely hijacked you, and you owned the stage as if the hijacking didn't even happen. I knew the hijacking happened, and a handful of us knew the hijacking happened, but so many other people didn't even realize what happened,
No.
which was beautiful because you were so smooth with it. And I was like, wow, that was impressive. I would have probably shoved my foot up their butt, and you didn't. So good for you.
Right. Right. Like run out of the room, like, what do I do now? And I thought, oh gosh, it was confidence that allowed me to do that. And so when I can work with my clients and build that confidence in them, it's like, again, when you know what your 3Gs are and what it is that you have to offer, it's super, super powerful. And so, yeah, let's take this, because I haven't fully done this before, and let's take this into an interpersonal communication. And so looking at the C and clarity, it's looking at, what do you want from this communication exchange? There may be times when you want, well, I know for me as a woman, plenty of times I need the communication as part of my foreplay before I go into the sensual touch with my partner and then on to the other fun stuff. But I need that communication. I need that emotional connection. And that's coming from the words and the body language that we exchange, that eye contact, and listening. Do I feel heard? Because if I don't feel heard and now you're going to try to seduce me, I'm totally turned off. It's not going to work. But when I see you leaning in and I hear you, and I hear that you hear me, and that first happens when we listen, right? It's even like when we're pleasuring ourselves, we have to first listen to our bodies. What does our body even want? What kind of pleasure do we want? Where do we want to feel and experience that pleasure? Because if we're just like, I'm just going to go through the motions, what's really going to happen? Not a whole lot. Yeah,
no,
not a whole lot. So when we can listen and not hear, there's a difference between hearing. Hearing is the sounds just moving through you. But listening is putting that effort in to understand what it is that you are hearing. So I could say in an exchange with Milica, so Milica, what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you witnessed me having a moment where I was hijacked, but I did it with such confidence and grace that for those who didn't know what was happening, they didn't know anything was happening. Am I hearing that correctly? So I'm playing
You're hearing that correctly.
I'm playing back what I've heard from Milica. And when we can do this back and forth, and I had to train my husband, even in our early days of dating, this is what I did. Because at first he's like, what are you doing? He's like, are you making fun of me? I said, not at all. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. And then when he started playing it back to me, he thought, oh, wow, that's powerful. And then when we can mirror the body language, it's if my partner's leaning in, I'm leaning in, or if I'm leaning in first and initiating that, my partner's leading in, what's happening in that personal space? And is that intimacy building up as we're communicating with each other? And so getting clear with that intention, do I want this to be like this long, sweet, loving process, or am I going for the quickie and I just want to jump into it as much fun as possible and make that happen? Or do I just want to have a moment where I can just be playful and now we get to carry on? Or is there a tough conversation that needs to happen? And how do we step into that? Knowing clearly what we want the intention to be. It doesn't mean that we'll necessarily get those results. Communication with another human being can be tricky sometimes, but when we can go in with that intention, and we can even open it up, honey, I have something that's on my heart, and I'm not asking for advice. This is great to say to men, right? I'm not asking for help. I just need to share. I just need to get it off of my chest. Is that okay? Or there are times I come in tough conversations. I want to share something with you, and it's a little sensitive. I'm a little concerned about how you're going to take it, but I need to communicate that. But I need to communicate it because I don't want it to eat me up internally. And I know that if I can just share it with you and just get it out of my system, we're going to be okay. Or I had a time when I was in a really, really, well, no, I was in a rough patch in the relationship. It was really abysmal darkness. And when we got through the healing process, I got to this point where I had the conversation with myself first about, we've been married for, oh gosh, that was around 2018. Yeah, so 16, 17 years at this point. And we were in a healing from the bad place where we were. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, I want laughter in my marriage. I just feel like we take each other so seriously. And if only I could have laughter in the marriage. And I see these other couples and they can laugh just about anything, or they're just having so much fun. I want that. And my inner voice said, well, why don't you be the one who brings the laughter? And I got sexist with myself, Milica. I'm like, but I'm the girl. It's the guys.
That's awesome.
Girl laugh. But then when
That's
I got
not my
honest
job.
with myself, it was like, wait a minute, why don't you bring the laughter? So 2019, I challenged myself, okay, once a day. And I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but once a day, I'm going to make my husband laugh. Well, that's a form of communication too. And it's playful.
Absolutely.
But how do I do that, right? And it's moments of spontaneity, improvisation. How do I take advantage of that? How can I get witty? How can I get funny? How can I just have fun and just find a way to play? So that's all part of that clarity. What is your intention? What is it that you desire? Because if you just go off of emotions, whew, anything goes. It's almost like a Russian roulette, right? Is it going to be something fun? Is it going to be something that turns into a fight? Is it going to be something that's going to push you away for the rest of the evening or week or even longer? Or is it something that's, you didn't see it coming, but it's going to bring you closer together? But when you know that intention, then you can start the communication in that direction. And I want to stop there for a moment in case you had any questions in that direction.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we have a commercial, and then we have like about 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes after the commercial until the show's over. So we're going to get through the rest of the A and D. We're going to finish Andy of Candy, and so that you guys can get the lowdown on how this works. And clarity is so important. And sometimes clarity doesn't always come out verbally, and sometimes people need to write things out too. So communication is not always what you guys think it is. It can be so much more. So keep that in mind. If thinking that a conversation is daunting, sometimes writing things out first, get them out of your own head so that you can actually communicate what's truly important to you, can be super helpful as well. I have a lot of clients who are like, I don't know what to say to my partner. I'm like, cool. Write it, because you have a lot going on. Let's start with the things that you're frustrated with, because you want to get that out of your system so that you can find where the love is, and then we can communicate that and then work our way backwards to resolve some of the issues. So there's always a way, guys. We are going to have a quickie commercial break. So you're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back after this quickie.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who are jumping in now near the end of the show, go back, listen to the whole thing, because guess what? It is recorded and you can go back. Yes, some of you are listening live, and I'm so excited about that. We have Lee Smith on today, who is a communications expert. She works with people for public speaking, but public speaking isn't always what you think it is. It's also about learning how to effectively communicate. And today we're talking about effective and playful communication and why it's important. And we've been talking about her Candy method, starting with C, which is clarity. And now we're moving on to Andy. While we have a few more minutes left of the show, I'd love to hand it over to you to explain the Andy part before we finish up.
It makes me think of the writing on Andy's shoe from Toy Story.
That's awesome.
Crazy. Yeah. That's awesome. Character. Oh, I love it. Oh gosh. So A is the affirmation, and an affirmation, it's that 6 inches here, the battlefield that we're carried with us everywhere that we go. And I love this thinking in the sense of being a world traveler. I can go anywhere. I can go to beautiful paradises. I can go to adventure seeking places, and yet I can't escape this. It's always with me. So particularly in interpersonal communication, it's the story that you are telling yourself in that moment. Oh my gosh, it's how this is where some NLP comes in, because it's what meaning are you giving to the moment at hand? Are you having fun? So you're like, oh, I feel good. This is amazing. We're getting closer. Oh, the intimacy is building. Or is it something like, oh, I can feel the energy rising and the tension, and now we're going to end up in a fight. Oh my goodness. Or, oh, if he happens to say this one more time, I'm just going to bite my tongue, or I'm just going to totally lash out. It could be all of those different things going on. And here's the amazing thing. This is the message I always love to drive home, is that you have a superpower when it comes to your affirmations. And that superpower is choice. You get to choose what you want to say. It's like when I was that 7, 8-year-old looking in the mirror and hearing my mom's voices, my dad's voices, and then my own voice. What did I want to say to myself? And you can have this I know even in the toughest conversations, and this was a time, he's so much better now, but when my husband was having his immature moments and he was just biting and biting and biting and biting, and I wasn't biting my tongue, I was listening, saying, I'm choosing to love him anyway. I'm choosing to breathe through this moment, and I'm going to love him anyway, and I'm going to come back with loving words. And didn't work all the time. I certainly had my moments of like, and full war mode was coming out, and yeah, those were not fun nights. Those did not lead to much pleasure, let me tell you. So the affirmation is the self-talk. The N is necessity. It's knowing, it's taking that piece of clarity, like this is where I am now, and this is where I want to be. And there's always a gap, and maybe the gap is only this much, and sometimes the gap feels it's so much more. But whatever that gap is, what are the necessary steps to get me from here to there? Do I need to listen more? Do I need to lean in? Do I need to mirror back body language, the eye contact, and the words that I'm hearing or that I think I'm hearing? Is that what I need to do to feel that closeness? Do I need to create a comic relief moment? Do I need to just hold space for this person? So it's the necessity part, and thinking about what it is that you really want that outcome to be, and recognizing that gap and then taking those steps. The D is discipline. And we have ongoing behaviors called habits. And I can't remember who said it, but it was somebody who said, we don't get what we want in life, we get our habits. And it's that repeated behavior. And we have habits that help us and get us what we want. Like we could have a kind, loving nature, and maybe that helps us to, like, people are happy when they're around us. They feel that positive energy. And we have habits that hold us back. You know, every time so-and-so says this, I am triggered and off I go. It could be looking at that. And it's having that observation, that awareness. It's not a judgment. It's not a beating yourself up or totally boasting on yourself too. Like, oh, I'm just so good at that. No, it's observing both the good and the not so good, and looking at, okay, what are my strengths that I bring into this communication, and what are some things that hold me back? I personally, I'm really good at holding things in internally. I do express a lot outwardly, but it's almost in its own code. So you have to really get to know me to kind of read between those lines. And I know that about myself, and I work on those things. And my husband lovingly calls them out, and that's part of our communication and working through those things. So it doesn't make me a bad person or a bad partner. It's just part of who I am, and how can I make that better? And then the why, that's all about you. We touched on that already, about your 3 Gs. What genius do you have that enhances the relationship? Like, what do you and your partner really love talking about? Like, you just totally get into it, and you have so much fun, and the exchange is fiery and fun and playful, or you're really good at communicating about those things. Maybe there are some tough situations. Maybe it is the money, maybe it is the bedroom, maybe it is the kids. whatever it happens to be that you're really good at. And then the gifts, what gifts do you have as a couple, and sharing and in that exchange. I used to really, really love that about my husband.
We're getting kicked off, Lee.
Thank you for
Sorry.
listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.